Hi, welcome to Honesty Wireless, the world's most honest salesman here. How can I help you today?
Hi, yeah, so I'd like a cheap new iPhone, please.
Cool. So unfortunately, the iPhone SEs are out of style, but we do have iPhone 14s. I think that'll be perfect for you. I'll get you started with that.
Actually, I'd like a cheap, small-ish iPhone with a 48 megapixel camera, specifically.
Okay, well then I can get you the iPhone 15 to get started. Perfect.
Wait. Okay, so I would like a cheap, smallish iPhone with a 48 megapixel camera, and I gotta have Apple Intelligence, so.
Okay. Nobody ever asked for that, but then I'll get you with an iPhone 15 Pro. We got those on refurb.
Okay, so I have exactly $600 to spend on a cheap, smallish iPhone. I need a 48 megapixel camera. I need Apple Intelligence. I need an OLED screen. I heard that was good. And it's gotta have Face ID. And I want that action button. So yeah.
Okay. No, yeah, that's still, an iPhone 15 Pro should actually be good for all of your needs. So.
And also, I hate high refresh rate. So it's gotta be 60 hertz. And MagSafe, I hate that too. Don't want that.
What? Who are you?
So this is the brand new 2025 iPhone 16e. And this is not a budget phone anymore. So the SEs of the past used to be definitively budget. This one is not. This phone starts at $599, and Apple storage upgrade prices are still ridiculous as usual. So the phone that I happen to be holding and testing right now costs $900. So this is not a budget phone. It happens to be the cheapest new iPhone available, but it's not cheap anymore, which makes it much harder to recommend. See, the iPhone SE for the past 2 generations, even though it's been old body, new chip, it's been the easiest iPhone to recommend for most people, to your parents, to kids, to random people getting their first iPhone, to anyone who is randomly upgrading from an old phone. It's just the cheapest new iPhone, and it's fine. But those phones were $399 and $429. So at $599, this phone that they've made, we just look at it differently now. And so I've been using this phone for the past week, trying to figure out who I think I could actually recommend to buy it. And I don't think there is one. The secret to making the SE iPhone so cheap for years has been the parts bin strategy. Basically taking parts that they've already spent the money engineering and just Frankensteining them together. And this is true again for the 16e. So this time it's mostly in the body of the iPhone 14. So you've got your aluminum build, your flat sides, your USB Type-C, even IP68 water resistance, but then it's a new single camera ring on the back. We'll get to that in a minute. And they've added the action button to the left side too. Up at the front, it also still appears to be straight from the iPhone 14. You've got your 6.1-inch screen with a notch and Face ID. It definitely is just all bringing the cheapest iPhone up to date with a more modern look. Again, remember the last one looked like this, so this is way better. It's not the brightest display in the world, so once you get it out into direct sunlight, it's a bit less visible than some other actually modern displays. And it's also still 60 hertz, which is still silly. But in general, it looks fine. But this is exactly where the nickel and diming begins. So you've got this whole family of iPhone 16s now, 16e, 16s, and 16 Pros. Good, better, best, if you want to call it that. And so the cheapest iPhone, they've had to take stuff out of it to get it down to this price. Some of the stuff they've taken out, not that big of a deal. Some of the stuff they've taken out, kind of harder to swallow. So here's one. The headline is that it gets the newest silicon straight from the flagship iPhone 16, the A18 chip. Great. Asterisk, this is not exactly the same silicon. This chip has one less GPU core. Pretty classic binning, not that big of a deal. This happens all the time. We just saw the Oppo Find N5. That also has a binned Snapdragon 8 Elite with only 7 cores instead of the typical 8. It's barely a footnote, honestly. You'll only really maybe notice it with intense gaming, with the few games that are actually that taxing on the GPU. But aside from that, it's really good. This formula has worked in the past, and it's always ended up being, on paper, one of the most powerful phones in its price bracket. And that's still true. It still is. So a bin CPU, GPU, fine. Fine cut. Another cut, colors. There's no colors. There's only matte black or matte white. And this whole design here really is actually, it's super clean and also super boring. There's a complete lack of text anywhere on the back. And then honestly, the relatively small camera bump is a bit refreshing, honestly. But yeah, if you want any type of color on this phone, you'll need a case or a skin to get that. It's funny, the last two iPhone SEs I reviewed were both bright red, which I thought was fun. And now there's actually no more product red products anywhere in Apple's lineups. That was that program that was the red colored products where the proceeds would go to help support AIDS programs. I kind of wonder what happened to that. So colors, that's another cut. Okay. No MagSafe in a 16E. That one feels a little worse. So obviously the last SE also didn't have MagSafe, but that was 3 years ago. And MagSafe has now become a staple of the iPhone experience, at least I thought. And this is supposed to be the cheapest version of a modern iPhone. But no, this phone has just slow first-gen Qi wireless charging that maxes out at 7.5 watts. And since there's no magnets to make sure you get alignment right, if you're just a little bit off, it can be painfully slow. This week I had it on my desk charger for like half an hour, and it gained 0% while just getting warmer. I don't have to remind you of the downsides of early wireless charging. Of course, if you really, really want MagSafe on your 16E, there's nothing stopping you from getting a case. So I've got one from channel sponsor dbrand here, their grip case, and it's got the magnets in the case like we've seen in the Android world, so perfect alignment every time. Yeah, I guess Apple didn't want SE users who only spend $600 to be able to get MagSafe accessories on the back of their phone without a case. Oh, and while we're at it, if you want to get full protection, dbrand also supports the 16E with their easy-to-install Prism 2.0 screen protector, so you can actually save 15% if you bundle a Prism with a grip case. So I'd recommend that route if you're buying both. Check them both out at dbrand.com/bundle. Either way, the iPhone has been the phone with magnets for so long in my head that I just feel like it's super disappointing to not have them in a new $600 iPhone. But now we got to talk about that camera. So there's a new single camera on the back. I actually think the whole good, better, best thing with the iPhones, where like the cheap one has one camera, the middle one has two cameras, and then the best one has three cameras, it actually feels pretty natural and like an easy to understand hierarchy. But please understand that this single camera is also not the same as the primary camera on the iPhone 16. It's 48 megapixels, just like the 16 and 16 Pro, but that's only part of the story. It is actually a much smaller sensor with inferior stabilization. So that manifests itself into just a very different look for photos. It kind of reminds me a lot, actually, of the A-series Pixel phones. It's not necessarily a worse look during daytime anyway. It's just different. Way less shallow depth of field, a lot less natural bokeh. There's still plenty of sharpness and typical iPhone colors and saturation, but then the image definitely gets much more quickly soft as the light starts to go away because the tiny sensor is just not getting as much light. It gets less likely to freeze action and more likely to kick in night mode. Also, missing the second lens means you're missing cinematic mode, spatial video, and macros. So I just think in general, if you're the type of person that cares a lot about the camera on your phone, you can see the clear, steady progression of better iPhone equals better camera. But this one, honestly, for its price range is fine. Now there's a couple other smaller things that the iPhone 16e also doesn't have. Wi-Fi 6E and Wi-Fi 7 support is one of them. Honestly, not a huge deal to me. It would be nice for future-proofing. Other phones do have it, but a lot of people will never notice because they also will never update their router. There's also no ultra-wideband, so you cannot do the precision finding with any AirTags or anything like that. There also is the action button, but there is no camera control on this phone, but honestly, I don't think anyone's dying for that. But the sneaky X factor with this phone is they've actually introduced a new part, and that's Apple's first in-house designed cellular modem called C1. So there were some rumors about this. I remember from years back, Apple spent literally $1 billion acquiring part of Intel's modem business. So fast forward 6 years, and this is the first iPhone that doesn't have a Qualcomm modem in it. Apple's replaced it with their own for 4G, 5G, GPS, and satellite. Now, they've had a lot of success with the vertical integration thing lately. We just saw this with, Apple Silicon replacing all the Intel chips that used to be in MacBooks. So I think the question people are wondering is this the Apple Silicon of modems? And I think the short answer is you probably won't really notice anything, but that's actually a good thing. Like, I did speed tests in different places, didn't find anything really too dramatic. Gripping the phone differently in different ways also doesn't seem to matter at all, because as far as I can tell, the antennas aren't really changed. There is no millimeter wave 5G support with this modem yet. That's something to keep in mind, though again, a lot of people will also never notice that. What is sneaky important though is modems can be or have been really big power draws in phones. Like, you've probably noticed this. If you're in an area with like kind of crappy cellular signal and your phone is like hunting and switching back and forth between 4G and 5G, that can drain your battery a lot. And the main claimed improvement of the C1 really is actually efficiency, which I love to hear. It's funny, SE iPhones of the past have always also been small because they're using older bodies. So small body, but modern processor that draws a lot of power. So battery life was just not a strong suit of those phones. But this 16E is a modern sized big phone. And then it has this new, more efficient modem that is actually physically smaller and makes room for a physically larger battery. So battery life on this phone's been really good in my week of using it. Literally on par with my 16 Pro. It wireless charges way slower, but it's really good battery. So two main thoughts here on the C1. One, if Apple's been working on this for years, it actually makes sense that they would debut it in a relatively low stakes, lower volume phone like the 16E, iron out any kinks or figure out if there's any issues with it. And then when it's a big deal in the iPhone 17 series later this year, should be all set. But also two, maybe this is like the other missing piece that will help enable Apple to make this like super thin iPhone Air everyone's talking about. Apple's always wanted to make super thin stuff, but battery life always suffers when you do that. So maybe this, alongside that silicon carbide battery tech, could enable them to make an iPhone that's super thin, whose battery doesn't suck. Maybe? We'll see. But overall, the iPhone 16e, the more I think about this phone, the more it feels like it exists specifically to push you up to an iPhone 16 in Apple's classic price ladder. You get enticed by this base price, but then the next rung on the ladder is only a small jump away, and it's sitting there with all of its shiny extras like MagSafe and an ultra-wide camera. Here's the problem though. This phone fits the price ladder, sure, but it doesn't fit the price tag. Like, let's be real, everything that's wrong with this phone is the price. Now I'm sure tariffs, the R&D of this new C1 chip, the extra RAM to support Apple Intelligence, inflation maybe even, like all these things to some extent contribute to the higher price of this phone. Maybe Apple also plans on increasing the entire iPhone 17 lineup price too. But this is the same identity crisis that the Pixel A series just had. I don't know if you remember that, but that budget phone came out, but the slightly older, more premium phone was still a better deal for most people because it was on a slight discount already. So you could get a refurbished iPhone 15 Pro for $600 today. I could argue that every single person considering the 16E should start by considering the 15 Pro. It's just everything about it is better. The screen, it's way brighter, more visible. It's a higher refresh rate. Triple cameras instead of one camera, same battery life. It's only 1 year older. It's got Apple Intelligence. It's just, you should just start with that phone instead. And I actually feel like I know what Apple's answer would be if I asked them who should buy this phone. Because if you go to their site for the 16E, the built-in compare tool only shows comparisons versus iPhone 12 and 12 mini and iPhone 11 and the older SEs. So basically, if you're somebody with one of these older phones, then this would be a perfectly fine upgrade for you. You get that more modern design, the new chip, Apple Intelligence, and you're set. And they'd be right. It's not a bad phone for those people at all. It's just the new price does not match the phone.
What? Who are you?